Good morning, everyone. This is Mike Caldwell from the Greater Des Moines Partnership speaking to you. We are going to be joined by Ryan West, Deputy Director of Iowa Workforce Development, in just a moment. I believe we're experiencing just a little bit of a problem getting him connected. So bear with us a moment while we figure out the connection.
Hi, Mike. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, let's go ahead and get started. So I'll just kick this off, and Ryan, I'll flip it over to you. Thank you all for joining us. Please mute your microphones and turn off your video to save bandwidth if you would. We're going to be using the chat window in Zoom, which Ryan should be able to see. Ryan, do you have the chat room available, and can you see it?
I can't see it.
Okay, great. So we are recording the call. It will be available. So what I'd like to do, I think Ryan has some opening comments, and then I think we've already got questions coming in. So Ryan, I'm going to mute my microphone, and you can begin.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And hello, everybody. Thank you for making time. Changing my screen here real quick. My name is Ryan West. I'm the Deputy Director of Iowa Workforce Development, and unfortunately, sometimes we got to get on and do these types of calls. This is a normal sort of set of circumstances here. So first and foremost, we appreciate the opportunity to come on. I want to thank Mary and Mike. Mary is a great partner of Iowa Workforce Development, and getting the opportunity to come on and try to calm the nerves of everybody is certainly something that we want to do during this time. So thank you for everybody for being patient. So what I thought I'd do is just kind of kick off where we are high level, and then we can go into the questions. So as you guys know, a lot of stuff was passed, or if you don't know, a lot of stuff, there was a huge bill passed last Friday through Congress. It had to be passed federally, and then ultimately what happens is called the CARES Act, and then ultimately what happens with that bill after it's passed, it gets passed on to the Department of Labor. And from the Department of Labor, they kind of flesh out how all the states will administer, particularly the unemployment insurance part. And so we're waiting on that guidance. So although the act passed, we still don't know, not only us, but all 50 states and the District of Columbia and the Virgin Islands, we don't know exactly all of the specifics yet. Those details are going to be coming to us this week. And when they start coming down, they'll be coming pretty quickly, I imagine. What the bill is really intended for, high level, for unemployment insurance purposes, is to help people out who don't normally qualify for unemployment insurance. So for your individuals, if you're on the phone here, for individuals who maybe are 1099 or self-employed and you're not reporting wages on yourself, there is relief in the bill to allow you individuals ideally to get paid for unemployment insurance. Now, what I want to specify or really make sure that I cover right off the bat is every one of your individual unemployment insurance claims is unique to itself. So I don't want to come on and say everybody's going to be guaranteed unemployment insurance. I hope everybody is, but everybody's situation is a little different. So I want to make sure everybody's okay with that. I got to make sure I'm politically correct, if you will, to state that. But what we want you to do is get on, go to iowaworkforcedevelopment.gov, and we've updated our banner. There's a lot of really good information on that site, and there will continue to be a lot of information on that site. That's where you really need to go to check out updates. The other spot we want you to go is to follow us on social media if you're not already. If you're not a social media person, I understand that. Try to follow us on Facebook at least, because we're putting out updates, and I imagine we'll have a lot of updates coming through there this week. We're on Facebook's, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Just search Iowa Workforce Development if you're not already. So if you filed an unemployment insurance claim already, and you're wondering about the $600, so are we. So we know that's going to be extra relief on top of your unemployment insurance benefit in most cases. We don't have guidance on how to deliver that yet. When we have that, we will make sure that gets applied. And if it goes back to a certain date, we'll ensure that it's retroactively attached to your unemployment insurance claim, so you get that. We had something similar to that during the recession. I'm not comparing this to the recession from an economic standpoint, just from the amount of an unemployment insurance claim load. example. So during that time, they had the same type of thing. It wasn't that much, but we had that in place. So when you got your weekly benefit amount, let's say it was $300, just as an example, you also received an extra $25 at that time from the Department of Labor or the federal government. Okay, and that comes from them. It's not paid from the employer, and that's how that'll work in this situation as well. So one of the questions that's come up a lot is, will disaster unemployment insurance be approved or paid out? And or DUA, as we commonly refer to it in the industry, DUA. There's a lot of acronyms in this stuff, so it can be a little confusing. Unfortunately, we make it a little too hard, I think, at times. But DUA was passed in the state of Iowa. Now, the difference is it wasn't passed for the unemployment insurance piece. Basically, DUA has three different phases of it, and the phase specifically that works with unemployment insurance is called the individual assistance piece, and it comes from FEMA. They didn't declare it, and I don't think it was declared because they knew they were going to work towards passing the CARES Act bill. So it all kind of got lumped in there. So we got to kind of sift through that quickly to make sure that we understand all of that to get it paid. But essentially what the CARES Act does in a nutshell is it really is set up to try to help as many people get paid as possible, as long as you qualify and you're doing the things you need to do. So that's where we're at. Again, we want you to go to iowaworkforcedevelopment.gov. If you haven't filed a claim yet, let's say you're you cut hair, or you have home health care or daycare, or you're an individual who is self-employed and you haven't got your claim on file yet, we want you to get your claim on the system so that when we get going with everything else, you're already one step ahead. You can go to iowaworkforcedevelopment.gov and do that. We're trying to refrain people from calling. Under normal circumstances, we would want you to call a customer service, and you certainly still can. Understanding that, there's a lot of calls that are coming in. So we want to make sure that we can try to get you online if we can. If you need language translation, that's a situation where obviously if you don't have somebody who can help you file your claim, we call in and we'll obviously get translation. I understand that's not always the easiest thing to do, and we want to be very cognizant of that. So essentially what we want to try to do is, if you can do it online, you don't like it, but you can still do it, that's what we want, so that we can free up the time for those individuals who absolutely need to be on the phone that we can help. So that was a long-winded way of me saying we've made a lot of strides there in the last week, in the last 4 or 5 days with the bill passing, because that frees up and allows people who weren't normally qualified to be qualified. Remember, under normal circumstances, how you qualify for unemployment insurance claim is it's based on the wages that your employer reports on you, right? You don't pay it out of your check. A lot of times people think with unemployment insurance, it comes out of your check, or, I had a paper route, when I was a kid, and I've been paying on that my entire life. Well, the reality is it unfortunately doesn't work that way. It's based on the employer. The employer every quarter sends us a contribution report, or a tax report, basically. There's a lot of different terms that we call it. And in that report, it will have the amount of money that the employees earned. And then we take that amount of money for each individual person, and we add it to a wage line here, and it's all based on Social Security number. So when an individual, hopefully never has to, but as where we are now, has to go file for unemployment, we can go back and see if they've earned enough wages. So basically, under normal circumstances, your unemployment insurance claim is solely based on what you earned in the last 18 months. And so that's what makes it up. It's obviously a little more technical than that. I don't want to get too far in the weeds, because then it can just be, can kind of get frustrating, and rightfully so, unless you're kind of working in it all the time. You don't need to know that. The system will generate for you. So if you haven't filed and you're in a situation where you think you should file, That's the bottom line on that, okay? Follow us on social media. Go out to Iowa Workforce Development so you can see that information there. All right, so what I'm going to do then, Mike, if you don't mind, I'm going to go right into the questions here.
That sounds great, Ryan.
Okay, so I'm going to read one here. So, assuming public schools do not reopen this school year, will school district, our employees have a usual and customary summer break, be eligible for unemployment all through the summer due to COVID-19 and the federal $600. Yeah, yes. So joining me as well, I'm being a little selfish here, is our legal counsel, Nick Olivencia. Nick has got a ton of experience in unemployment insurance as well. The school question is a really good one. It comes up a lot. For those of you who aren't and work in education, schools are set up a little different. You know, they have those summer breaks, or I don't know how much of a summer break you really get as a teacher anymore. But so in the past, what has happened, typically those individuals weren't eligible for unemployment insurance. That's kind of all changed now. You know, we're in uncharted territory. So yes, go ahead and file and you should be good to go. Okay. So, and that goes for maybe bus drivers or anybody affiliated with the school as well. When you file, the system will generate to determine if you're going to qualify under the normal circumstances or through the new federal CARES Act that has passed. Second question. So I hope I answered that question for you there. Are substitute teachers eligible to apply for unemployment? Yep, you absolutely are. You fall on that same thing. What about seasonal employees that were just brought back off of unemployment that will need to be put back on, at least limited by given extended benefits if they already used their eligibility? Yes. Go ahead and file. Yeah, that's a good question. That's a common one. And I'll say real quick, if you are on partial, let's say you were put on reduced hours. So, you know, you went from 40 hours to 20 hours and you're wondering if you can file, you can file. Just make sure that you're reporting your wages every week when you call in to do your weekly claim. Okay. That's a real biggie, because we want to make sure that, those are reported. Those need to be reported by law. Next question. Must an employee of a small employer exhaust their vacation days before they can claim unemployment? Sick days have already been exhausted. You want to take this one?
Yep. We have changed our policy on this. We were requiring everyone to use up their PTO, sick or vacation. That, however, is something we've just changed. So no, you will not have to use that. One thing to keep in mind, however, unemployment does not accrue over time like PTO, vacation, and sick. So usually unemployment is a benefit of last resort for people trying to get back into the workforce. So just know if you exhaust your benefits now and something were to happen in the next year, you're not going to have that lifeline for you. But certainly at this time, do what is in your best interest and what you need. Certainly talk to your employers about what options they have with the paid leave or paid sick or telecommuting, but you can certainly use unemployment at this time instead of vacation or PTO.
Yeah, and that press release went out this morning, and we have that actually up on our website. Go to iowaworkforcedevelopment.gov. Again, CARES Act kind of shifted a lot of what we were doing, and so we made some changes that were released this morning. Please comment on workers who are still employed but have had their hours reduced. You have a good question, kind of adjust that one. They can go ahead and file. Just make sure that you're having them claim their wages. Are there any scenarios where someone could qualify for CARES unemployment but not state Iowa employment? Sure there are, yeah. So there are. People may have not earned enough money. So let's say if somebody has a job but they just didn't earn enough money. Remember, I don't want to get too technical, but when you work for your employer, you got to have earned wages in at least 2 different quarters of the last 18 months. And it gets a little more specific than that, but high level. And in one quarter, you have to have had earned at least $1,660. And in the other quarter, at least, I believe it's $865. If you don't have that, you won't monetarily qualify. So in those situations, then yes, you could qualify perhaps for the CARES Act. So go ahead and file. That's a good question. I had a question this morning about farmers. Are farmers potentially eligible for unemployment? Yeah, they will be under the CARES Act. So farmers are a good example of somebody who technically or traditionally would qualify under a DUA, that disaster unemployment declaration. Since we don't technically get that or not for unemployment, they're going to probably fall under the CARES Act. So good question.
And one thing on that to recognize, and for folks who may have questions about that, have your folks start preparing their tax documents. Part of how they calculate is looking at what earnings you have and showing why you're not able to work. So typically under disaster unemployment, we look for that kind of information, why you've been impacted, how you've been impacted, so that you do qualify. So for some people, it's not a big deal. They have that stored away under their tax filings at home. But for some people, it turns into quite a big deal. So if you're thinking about going under the CARES Act 4 and you're not eligible right now, you are going to have to show that you were in the workforce and that you had wages or you had some form of income and that this has impacted you from receiving and being able to get that. So make sure if people are asking you that you tell them to start preparing all that information so they can prove past wages.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that'll be a real good FAQ that we do. I think most likely we'll end up doing another webinar, probably several, when we get more guidance on this. But yeah, just something to be really prepared for, that you'll need to have readily available. Will the $600 be prorated for people whose schedule has been reduced and are only working 3 days per week? I don't know if we know the answer on that one yet. I don't think so, but that's a good question.
We've sent that question to the Department of Labor, how they're going to do that with partial claims and if people are on voluntary shared work. They do not have an answer to that yet on if you qualify in any capacity, you get the $600, but that is something we'll be posting on our website as soon as we've gotten further guidance from the federal government. Yeah,
that's a very good question. So hold tight on that one. That's a great example of one we're kind of waiting on the Secretary of Labor and his staff. Can employers continue paying for health insurance benefits for employees while they are furloughed? Yes, that's a good question. Absolutely, you can. Are there any forms or info employers need to identify in this current situation? Are there any forms or info? No, if you're a self-employed employer, you may want to file for unemployment insurance. Now, remember, there are certain circumstances where employers will report wages on themselves and be eligible for unemployment. That may sound a little crazy, but that is allowable, and we'll have those. But for the most part, I think as an employer, just try to follow us on social and check the website, because there's just as much information out there about the employer as there is the claimant, and especially on the PTO guidance that we just released this morning. So good question. I own my own business and I am LLC filing as an S Corp. I'm the only employee. While I'm still bringing a little income in, has been significantly reduced to COVID-19. I pay myself payroll on a monthly basis, but it's not a lot. How will employment work for me? Go ahead and file. So that's a good example where somebody's going to qualify most likely under the normal circumstances. Sorry, I'm talking out loud here, guys. Yeah, so go ahead and file. Good question. You should be eligible. What you'll want to do is continue to report those wages. So go ahead and get your claim on the system. Go to iowaworkforcedevelopment.gov. What about people laid off but not able to work because sick and were told not to come back for 2 weeks? Yep, they can file as well. So go ahead and file your claim. I'm asking for my employer. Currently, I have an employee on layoff, but she was scheduled to start maternity leave around April 2nd when the baby was due. How will this affect her unemployment? Asking my employer. So I think on the those were allowing for unemployment as well, right?
Potentially. What she should be looking for there is FMLA.
Yeah.
I mean, the employer benefits do need to continue to come first, because here we are not requiring able and available due to the coronavirus, but certainly paternity leave would render somebody not able and available to work. So that individual should be looking at her FMLA or working directly with her employer on how that is going to be handled. That should not be an unemployment insurance circumstance. That should be a FMLA.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's unfortunately a common one that's coming up. Next question, will CARES Act apply to $600? Well, I'm sorry, let me start that over. Will CARES Act apply to give $600 to workers on reduced schedule or shared work?
Yep, on that one, we're still waiting on the guidance from DOL on that. It's a great question.
Yeah, so shared work is a voluntary shared work program. If we have any employers on who aren't familiar, go out to iowaworkforcedevelopment.gov and check that out. Good question. We don't know the guidance on that one yet. What about sole proprietors with no employees? Are they eligible for benefits, and where should they apply? Yep. So you're able. Most likely, you'll fall under the CARES Act. Go ahead and out to Iowa Workforce Development. Everybody applies at the same spot. Just click on the individual tab in the top left. When you click, it's right on the homepage. If you're doing it on your phone as well, I encourage you to try to do it from a computer if you can. But there's just a ton of great information out there. Let's see, where are we at now? Oh, yep. Can employees who are furloughed continue to volunteer for the meals program, for the meal programs that are still being provided to community children on a daily basis? Yeah, I think
yes.
so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
We waived the able and available
yeah.
and the actively looking for work since this is such a unique viral situation. So yes, that will not impact unemployment.
Yeah, duh, I should have realized that. And thank you for doing that. Obviously, this is a tough time for everybody. What should a server do if she was making tips but no longer makes tips because the restaurant is carry out only? They are no longer making server wages, but instead making regular wages, and hours have not been impacted. They are still employed. Can they file for unemployment for more wages because they get an extra $600 a week? No layoffs at the restaurant as of yet. Yeah, I don't know.
For those people, they do need to continue to file for unemployment. It may be an issue because when you are dependent on tips, your wages are not going to be, all we have in our system is what's reported by the employer, so we'll have the wages. So it's possible somebody like that may not qualify because they don't have enough wages in their base period. But if they're being paid more now, that's great that they have regular wages. But certainly, I mean, the worst thing you do if you file is you're told you're not monetarily eligible, and then they're going to be eligible under the CARES Act. And if not, if they are eligible, then they're going to be told what their monetary amount is going to be, and then that $600 a week may help. But they also need to report whatever hours they're working. So the best thing there is that they are working and being paid regular wages. But there you just have to file and see what the result is, since it'll be different for everyone depending on what those wages were cumulatively before the regular wages changed.
Yeah. So. Good question. Would you say gig workers, Uber drivers would have to look into the DUA as their only option? Yeah. So agree. They should fall under the CARES Act. So go ahead and file. Did I miss one? Oh yeah. Sorry. Due to the payment, very good question on the gig workers though. Yeah. Please go ahead and file. Do the payments of the 80 hours of paid sick leave not start until after April 1st, or can the employer pay it for hours worked prior to April 1?
We've received that a lot. The interpretation we got from DOL was that the bill had immediate on there, so a lot of people have already done that, even though the bill does say effective April 1st. We haven't gotten further clarification on that, but we've sent that along as well. I think the federal government is just hoping that people are being paid wages and it's on the books and they're being taxed. But certainly on that, we do not have a final answer on that. But as we get closer to April 1st, that will hopefully not impact too many more people, but we do not have a final answer on that at this time.
Yeah, very good question. Do sole proprietors qualify for unemployment under CARES Act? Yes, you do. Yep, go ahead and file. If someone is laid off versus furloughed, can we still pay health insurance? Yep, absolutely. Will CARES Act apply to partial shutdown or quarantine as a matter of business policy? Hard to get health care guidance. They're busy. Yes, it will. Good question. So I think you're asking there, can they file? Yeah, please do. If an employee is sick but is not tested for COVID and required to be 72 hours fever-free before returning, would they qualify for benefits during the days they are not able to work?
They should still file because it'll depend on the wages they're making. It's possible that even without the 72 hours, they may make more money than they get in unemployment, but it doesn't hurt to at least file for a partial claim. We have that happen all the time.
Yep. An employee is paid commission only. They get paid a month to month, 2 months. I'm sorry, they get paid a month or to 2 months after the company completes a sale. Are they eligible to claim unemployment now since their commissions will likely decrease in coming months? I would suggest just go ahead and file. That's a good question. Do I need to report draws from company as wages or just payroll? I also only pay myself once a month. What do I report weekly? Yeah.
There, you're going to want to be as accurate as you can if you're only paying yourself on that draw, because certainly if you're paying yourself for 2 weeks, we would be looking at those 2 weeks of your pay. So, I mean, if you are being paid wages, we would deduct any unemployment amount up to the maximum from whatever the wages are you're making. But you certainly want to continue to be honest about what you're paying yourself each week. So if it's once a month, you probably need to break that out by 4 weeks and claim that as your weekly amount that you're making in wages.
Yeah, you're just going to have to do the best you can on that. I know it's not the greatest answer, but I agree in Nick's assessment there. That's the best you're going to be able to do. Will it be unemployment or CARES Act? Will it be unemployment or CARES Act, or will it be both for paying benefits? Well, it kind of depends on your scenario. It could be a combination of both. It could be one, because the $600 is technically under the CARES Act, and you could get that while have received a normal unemployment insurance claim. So it just kind of depends on your scenario. Certainly, we want to make sure that everybody gets what's deserved and work through those as quickly as we can. Which one they're on? Oh, yeah. What about the sales staff that work for commission, but much of their sales have stopped? Is there any relief for them or remain employed by us?
We just look at the wages that have been reported to us. That's what's going to calculate their weekly benefit amount, their maximum benefit amount. So it depends how they're being paid. But if their income is stopped, they should certainly be looking to file. If they're a W-2 and those wages stop coming in, then that's certainly they're going to want to file for unemployment. If they're being paid as just commission on and they're a 1099, they're going to qualify for the CARES Act. So they should be filing regardless, even if they have enough money in 1 week. They want to keep that claim going, so they don't have a break in it, so that they'll get paid faster. So they should be, if there's any drop in what they're making, they should be filing for unemployment to be safe.
Are we aware of delays in unemployment payments? Several coworkers are reporting no payment filed over a week ago. So there should be no delays. With that, certainly we obviously had an influx of claims. I would suggest our system handled it just as well or better than most states. If those individuals feel like they should have been paid already or they're behind, we'll need those individuals to call in. But the system's up and working fine, and we're processing through everything as we have been. We did have a little bit of time last week where we were down just for a little bit, but it was a huge surge, and luckily we were able to get through it. So very good question, though.
One thing we have on that is when you file your first claim, typically your first payment comes out about 20 to 23 days later. So a lot of times people are reporting a delay in that first payment. We have expedited that, and we've opened it up so that payment gets made within 7 to 10 days. So if you're filing for the first time, or if there's a break in your claim, there is going to be a delay on that first payment, and that's, I think, what that question was asking about, is because typically that is where the delay is in that first week when you file. Otherwise, once you have a continued claim, it comes out really quickly. But on that first claim, just be aware that there is a delay, and that's why we tell everyone to go ahead and file and keep filing every week so that there aren't breaks that are going to create that delay again in that first week payment.
Yeah, I'm hearing employees receiving an extra $600. Can you explain this? Yeah, no problem. So the extra $600 is part of the CARES Act bill. It's an infusion of money to help individuals, help the economy, help the communities. And certainly everybody in Iowa will get it who qualifies for it. We're working through guidance to make sure we know how to appropriately apply it, and that'll come down from the Department of Labor. So the CARES Act bill was passed, but then it still has to go through a few hurdles to make its way to the state so they can start administering it. So good question. If I'm employed by a nonprofit and they cut staff but take on additional volunteers to save their budget, can a laid off person volunteer at the same organization and apply for unemployment?
This one is very tricky. Yeah. I would discourage that from happening. If you go from a paid position and then you become a volunteer doing the same work, you may have a labor violation because there you are still doing the work and you are entitled to payment if that position has done that. So that is so Shannon, you may want to connect with us offline on that one, but that one is a real problem potentially for that nonprofit.
How about a partial claim for 1 or 2 2 days per week, unpaid to care for children out of school? If yes, will PTO be need to use first? So that's changed as of this morning. So you should just be able to file if you haven't already. Good question. I know the PTO has been a little confusing at times, but as of today, that policy has changed. What about sole proprietors who pay themselves with an owner's draw and pay quarterly estimated tax? Can they file it? You absolutely can. Good question there. Has the minimum wage requirements been lowered to qualify for unemployment? So no, the minimum wage requirements have not been lowered. Those are set in stone every year. They adjust based on the economy. What you need to qualify for today is the same as when it went into effect July 1st, or I think it was July 6th of 2019. That's when they change every July. So good question. Can you define the difference between let me go back to that question. Have the minimum requirements been lowered? They haven't been lowered, like I said, but with the CARES Act, that kind of adjusts who else can potentially be qualified for unemployment insurance and will be qualified. Can you define the difference between layoff and furlough?
For us, there is no difference. We're looking at whether you're being impacted by the coronavirus, and if so, we are going to pay out unemployment benefits. For the employer, however, that there may be some consequences with benefits or other things, so certainly make sure you're aware of all the laws for you, but for our purposes, there is no difference between the two.
Thank you, Dan, for the kind words. Appreciate you saying that. That means a lot to us. Thanks for all our help. Does CARES Act impact voluntary shared work program? So we don't know yet. We're looking at that. The impact is a question of what would you be qualified for any additional money? And we're waiting for guidance on that. So as soon as we have that, we'll get that out on the frequently asked questions. And I think we'll end up doing another webinar, quite honestly, when we get more guidance. So good question. We pay our employees at the end of the month for last month's hours worked, AKA their checks are a month late. If they file for unemployment now, will they start getting checks soon, or will they start coming once the regular checks have come? Go ahead.
That one's also problematic. What we look at is when wages were earned. So certainly those individuals need to be very careful to be reporting their wages for the week. They're going to be asked every single week if they have any wages. If they combine all of it into 1 week, they're going to end up with a fraudulent overpayment, and that is not a good situation with us. So they need to be as careful as possible about reporting accurately how they get paid or what amount qualifies for each week.
Yeah. So what I would suggest there, if you're the employer or if you're the employee or HR, just make sure your folks know when they claim their weekly claim every Sunday. That's when we ask people to do it, which make sure you're doing it on Sunday. That ensures that you will get paid timely. Don't wait throughout the week to do that. Once you start doing your weekly claim, every week, if they get paid for the week, just have them claim those wages. And it may negate them getting paid for the week, but then they clear the hurdle and they don't have to worry about it down on the end of it, all right? So good question. Does the $600 from the CARES Act affect unemployment benefits? The only way it would affect it would be on top of what you're receiving. So we're still fleshing out some of the rules on it. But the intent of the $600 is as an add-on, really, and for lack of a better term, to help infuse the economy and the communities. That's exactly what that was set up for. If we filed on Sunday last week, should we be getting a check? I'm sorry. If we filed on Sunday last week, should we be checking in if we haven't received our first payment? So, not necessarily. Your claim may not just be ready to be released. We're working through all those to get them. So check it this week, check it today or tomorrow. Without knowing when you filed your initial claim, I don't want to use your name. Why don't you check with customer service on that one? That's one, or send us through our email inbox. We can help you with that. I think you're on pace. You should be getting your money here soon.
Yeah, and it's about 7 to 10 days. And just to give you a heads up, we are just over about 12,000 phone calls today. So if you're calling customer service with that question, please do not. There are folks that have other questions, but it is coming. Just be patient. It should be on that first one about 7 to 10 days. So if it's Thursday and you haven't received it, then maybe that's worth calling in. Otherwise, our phones are completely blown up right now.
Yeah. So thank you for filing timely as well. What about employees who have used all PTO based on prior guidelines? Any way to get back? So that will not be retroactive. It starts today moving forward.
Yeah, but on that one, the PTO money you received is far in excess of what the unemployment would be, most likely. So while you did have to use that, at least you're still going to have that unemployment for the full length of time that you're eligible for it.
If you take a pay reduction or a salary due to no income coming in from COVID, but continue working on a salary reduction, can you get unemployment for lost wages? Yeah. So go ahead and file that. Just be a reduction in wages.
Just make sure on that because we've had some employers getting very creative where they're paying the difference to their workers. If you're getting paid for past weeks, you would have to report that for those past weeks, and you would have an overpayment with us. So just make sure that if you're an employer or an employee and there are things like that that come up, that you're reporting properly, because the last thing you want is to come out of this with some kind of an overpayment with us.
Claims on Sunday for the previous week or incoming week? So good question. So let's use yesterday. So yesterday, people called in or went online and claimed their week. That's what we have them do anymore. They would have claimed last week. Right? So you're always a week behind. So this upcoming Sunday, you'll be claiming for the week that we're in right now. So good question. Don't let that one confuse you. It can be a little, it's as simple as it sounds. Just remember the Sunday is for the week behind you. That's the easiest way to remember it. If an employee qualifies for the paid FMLA under COVID legislation, can they choose to file unemployment instead? I don't think that one's come up yet.
No, if they qualify and have FMLA eligibility, they have to do the FMLA.
Yeah, FMLA is pretty cut and dry on that. If employer has done a layoff, but doctor recommends to not go back to work for 30 days, can claim be filed for temporary layoff? It can. Go ahead and file.
And one thing on that, make sure this depends with employers. Some employers are requiring their workers to be at work. So if there's a doctor note that recommends it but does not order it or does not give a formal reason as to why not, that worker needs to be careful because they could actually become unemployed permanently from that employer. So they need to make sure they're connecting with the employer and they're on the same page on what the employer is going to allow. Some employers are also allowing telecommuting and other things. So certainly they need to connect with that employer. The employee and employer need to connect and make sure they're on the same page as to what's allowed and what's not.
It's from our guy there. Thank you. Trying to avoid calling. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you saying that and doing that for us. Business has only been open for 5 months. Will the staff qualify for unemployment? So that's going to depend on each individual employee. Remember, what we're looking at over the past 18 months is all of the employers in what we call their base period. Base period is the last 18 months. So just go ahead and have your folks file. You're not going to be able to give them a definitive answer. That's going to take into consideration a lot of things. And ultimately, they may qualify under the CARES Act anyway. So just suggest they file. For CARES, retroactively applies back to January 27th. Do those claimants from need to do anything for their prior claim? So if an employer is eligible for FFCRA, the individual must exhaust the FFCRA benefits prior to filing for unemployment. Well, that's
yes.
Yeah.
On that, on those employer benefits, they do need to exhaust. That's what they're intended for prior to filing for unemployment. They can always file for unemployment, but if they have those benefits coming in, they have to report any kind of wages that those are.
Well, employees that work for a nonprofit 501c3 that have a reimbursable status be eligible for state unemployment or federal CARES Act? Yes, they will. Yep, go ahead and have them file. Good question. I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. My company has reduced hours to 32 hours per week instead of 40. Can we get unemployment or do we qualify for reduction of hours? So you can certainly file, and we encourage that. What that really is based on is what they're getting paid throughout the week. So there's a threshold. So after $100, it's a dollar for dollar reduction. So if they're getting about $250 a week, just off the top of my head, they'll qualify for probably $200. It all depends on what their hourly or salaried wage is for the week. So we just encourage them to file. And if they don't, well, at least they've they've crossed that off the list.
And certainly on that one, when you say you qualify for reduction of hours, if your employer has sent in an application with us on the voluntary shared work, then there you would be getting paid whatever your 32 hours are, and because your hours have been cut by 20%, you would be eligible for 20% of your weekly benefit amount on top of the hours you worked. So make sure if your hours have been cut to 32, talk to your employer and find out if they have put you on a voluntary shared work plan with us. If not, then yes, file anyway. But if you are on that plan, you may get additional benefits as well.
Yeah, it seems to me people will file for unemployment just so they can make more money than if they were working with the $600 add-on. Can they file if their company has no layoffs, but they just want to make more money? No.
If they have voluntarily quit, they do not get to file for benefits. You would get a notice of claim that they have done that. That was the fear in the Senate on the Republican side, was that the benefits plus the 600 was going to be more than wages, and it was going to cause an incentive to stay home from work. We have seen that. There are places that need workers, and their workers are not coming back, or they're refusing to come back. So certainly that is something to keep in mind that we do anticipate will happen. But certainly if somebody has voluntarily quit or given you a bogus reason to why they're off, you need to really look at that and make a decision as a business what you're going to do with that person.
Yeah, good question there. Can you get the $600 only per week if you're self-employed and don't qualify for more? So you should probably qualify under the CARES Act for the modified DUA section. So go ahead and file. We'll request your taxes like we talked about earlier. If you weren't on, you'll want to file. We'll have more guidance on that as it comes out, but I would suggest to go ahead and get your claim on. Without knowing the specifics yet, we don't know how the 600 will work on that one, I don't think, but good question. Randy, I think we got your question answered there. As a school district, we allow hourly employees to defer compensation annualized pay, so they get 12 paychecks per year each year. Must the deferred compensation be paid out prior to them qualifying for unemployment? I got to read them. Yeah, yes, okay.
On that, if that's how they've chosen to get paid and they're being paid their wages in that time frame, they have to report those wages for each week. So if they're going to file for unemployment, they're going to have to, that deferred compensation is going to have to be broken out by each week as to how much they're receiving.
This is a follow-up. Heather's, it is a nonprofit agency. That's okay. Same things. So go back up to that. That's the original question there. I want to make sure so even with the reduced hours, I would suggest they go ahead and file. And that should apply in the same manner. Who pays for employee benefits if there are layoffs? Medical, dental, and such. Who pays for benefits?
That it would not be connected to unemployment insurance.
Yeah.
So it would still be on the employer to pay their piece and the worker to pay their piece.
Yeah, I think I skipped one too. How do you file if you're a full-time, but your hours range from 32 to 40? You would just file at iowaworkforcedevelopment.gov. And in that case, you're going to want to make sure that you're reporting your wages. Again, remember, if you file, your employer will get a notice of claim. And if your employer is not in agreement, they can obviously protest. But same thing, you're just going to go to iowaworkforcedevelopment.gov under the individual tab. Everybody files at the same spot. Everybody does. If self-employed and have not filed 2019 tax return, how will weekly benefits be determined? So we'll just look at what you can provide us. I doubt that'll be the only individual, and that's something certainly that question is going to come up under the normal circumstances. We're working through the final guidance on that. Just be prepared. What is the reference to self-certify in the CARES Act? So self-certify, I don't know if I read that in the CARES Act. Do you remember that?
Yeah, the self-certify is the information you're going to be providing.
Okay.
So you're self-certifying that what you are providing is true and accurate. The consequences for anything fraudulent under this, because they are significant, are harsh penalties. So certainly make sure that you're telling people that they're providing the right information. They shouldn't be guesstimating. They need to have the documentation that is true and accurate, and they're certifying. It is a felony to do a fraudulent practice for unemployment insurance purposes. So certainly, they're going to want to be as accurate as they can and self-certify that what they're turning in is true and accurate.
Yeah, good question. How are VA disability payments counted? So I believe those are non-deductible, just like Social Security, so you wouldn't have to worry about that. Can workers refuse to, I hope I didn't mean to go over that one too quick, Eric, but that should be a non-issue. Can workers refuse to come back after furlough if they can make more money with the additional $600, or they refuse to come back when they call them back? That was terminated cause. Yeah, that's a good question. I wondered. I thought that question may come up a little earlier in this process, to be honest with you. So that's going to be a case-for-case, obviously, scenario. Without getting too far in the weeds, and that's probably a one-off question, quite honestly. Here's the reality. I don't know if we don't know the extent of this. And so we're trying to look at it day to day, week to week, and not trying to get too far ahead of that. That is going to be a situation that you, the employer, are going to have to make the best case decision on.
Correct.
As you go through, unfortunately or fortunately. So I would suggest just use your best judgment on that and go through the proper chain when you need to do it.
Yeah, Renee, on that one, we do anticipate issues. If they're refusing to come back just for pay, and they're refusing a directive from the employer to come back, that is a for-cause situation under our law. The thing you got to determine is, what ability do you have to get other workers? I know right now some employers are trying hard to get temporary part-time workers, and other places are paying their people more so that they will not leave. So you're going to have to decide what's best as the employer in that situation. But if they don't come back solely because of pay, you can terminate, and that would be a disqualification for unemployment.
If an organization has reduced hours, but it's not consistent from week to week, and it's not the same across the board or even the same cut within the department, does that qualify for voluntary shared work program, or does it need to be the same cut in hours across the board? Also, it looks like the cut can be greater than 50% as well, correct? So if some are completely laid off, they don't qualify for the benefit. So employers can have some on VSW and some regular apply for benefits.
What we look at there is the unit. So if you have a whole unit, you can't put half a unit on there. So let's say it's an HR department. You need to put them all on the same restrictions. It's got to be between 20 and 50% of a cut, so that is correct. They will need to all be treated equally, however, for that unit. Otherwise, that will be a disqualification from the voluntary shared work. And at that time, they could just apply for regular benefits. But the time it takes for you to set up the voluntary shared work, you're not going to want to break off of that every week. It's just easier. Either you have it or you don't. But if they don't and they have less hours, then they can, of course, apply for benefits.
If we have a voluntary firefighter who only gets paid once a year, but he was laid off from his other employer, how do we report his normal wages?
I would pay him the way you normally do. He's going to be eligible for benefits if he was laid off. That wage, worry about that the one time a year you pay him. Certainly, he doesn't need to extrapolate that one pay across 52 weeks. That would be ridiculous. That person should just file for unemployment as regular.
Does the 600 additional end on 7/31/2020? I think that went till the end of the year, actually. I don't know if I have the complete date on that. That's a good question. As soon as we know that, that'll be at the top of the FAQ questions. Do you remember that one by chance?
Yeah, and on that one, it may still continue to change. So it's available now. It's going to depend on what this looks like going down. I think it's all very fluid.
Yeah.
And Congress is going to continue to look at it and see what the impacts are. This is really a day-to-day thing, and all these different pieces could change. So just be aware that it could change, but for now, we're looking at it just right now in the immediate month or two, but keep looking to see because it may continue to extend out.
When filing as self-employed, it is asking for my business name, but it says is not found. How do I file? So just go ahead and file. I think you should be able to still type your name in. If I'm wrong on that one, Heather, let me know.
It could be, Heather, that because if you're not, if you're at 1099, we may not have your information at all.
Yeah. So just type it in. It should give you the option to type it in. Good question. That's a normal one. That doesn't mean that you're not going to qualify, though. I think that's the main thing to know. What reason should be chosen for reason of separation if it is COVID-19 and a worker is off for medical reasons, still working, reduced hours, or layoff, lack of work? I don't see an option for COVID related. I think there should be a COVID drop down on there. Obviously, there's not, because you're putting the question in there, so I don't mean to disagree with you at all. I thought we had that on there. I would suggest just do layoff, lack of work. Yeah, I'll check on that COVID-19 selection. I thought we had a drop down on that. Good question. Unemployment is open to people who have child care problems due to school closing. School would be out at end of May. Can employees still rely on school closed provision? I think what we're looking for there is, can employees still use that as a reason to file? Which would be, go ahead.
It's going to depend on your wages as when you're getting paid as well. So if school does end at end of May, or if that's when it's supposed to end, you still need to look at, anything with the teachers is a little bit different because of the guaranteed work that next following year as to what you're eligible to or not. So just file on that, Dan, or if you want to recommend that people file if they have questions to call in, because the school ones get a little bit different depending on the status of the teacher or whoever the worker is, and then how they've elected to be paid.
Yeah, and I think that's a good question, Dan. I think the schools too, I don't, I think we're going to get into this area here. Again, I'm not an education expert, so forgive me, but I think just because of the calendar, we're going to get into the time frame here where they're going to have to re-examine what is or isn't going to happen for the rest of this year. If we didn't get that one all the way answered, Dan, shoot us another question on that one. For VSW, have a unit of office hour, all office, let me just read that one over. My gosh. Can I skew one more of these questions up? I'm sorry. For VSW, have a unit of all office hourly.
Well, we look at it is the unit. So if all your office is the same and they're all hourly, then yes. But if you have people that are salary and some hourly within the same unit, we look at the unit, not necessarily their designation. So you're going to want to look at the unit designation and how you're applying that, and it's going to have to be uniform to the entire unit. We've had this where people are trying to keep their salaried staff nearby and still getting paid, so that when everything turns, they're ready to get up and running as fast as possible. But for VSW, that's what we look at. It's the whole unit being treated the same.
Yeah, good question there. I got in late, so perhaps I missed this one. Is there a place to check on the status of the claim? Yeah, so you can go online and do that, or I believe you can still call on go to iowaworkforcedevelopment.gov, and under the weekly certification tab, you should be able to check that. I believe you still can check on when your payment's going to be coming. So good question, Sean. Just go out there and check that again. I don't have the screen pulled up in front of me. Just go on there and screw around with it. Excuse me. There's a lot of good information on there that should allow you to find that information. I got in late, so if we use vacation to pay for insurance, do we have to claim it? Yes, you do.
And that's one reason too for folks who have been using PTO or vacation or sick, is to have that full pay and for insurance purposes. So if you are using it and you've had it, you do need to claim that. Besides self-employed, who is now eligible for unemployment, who regularly are not? Anybody who regularly is not is now eligible. You just have to show that you've been impacted and the coronavirus has impacted your business operations and you're no longer receiving a wage like you were prior.
Yeah.
So do you wait for unemployment until after the first week of no pay? No. As soon as you know you're going to be unemployed, and even if it's coming up, start filing immediately. You just have to make sure you're reporting your wages. So if you know that the layoff is coming, let's say this Friday, file now, because again, that first week is going to be the delayed week of payment. So you're going to want to get in there early so you don't have to make that delay.
Is there any more?
And there will be more questions as things evolve. If you guys want to send us something for additional or outside of this when the questions stop, please feel free to. We are doing this day and night, fielding questions and one-offs. online, email, phone calls. So whatever you need, just let us know. Do you file weekly for CARES Act? Yes, it's just like any other unemployment. File for it. If you're eligible, you're going to get it. Has anyone really been far, even has decided to use, go back and do a little more? I'm not sure what it's asking here, but certainly if there are employer benefits available, people should be using that. If there's PTO, vacation, sick, you are not required to use that, but you really need to figure out, can you afford to be on unemployment? Are your benefits going to run out with your employer, health insurance, other things? So you're going to want to talk to your employer and make sure what's going to happen to you if you are on temporary layoff, as to what other issues you may have down the road when you're having to decide. But if it's FMLA or something like that, you have to use that first, and unemployment there is a last resort.
Well, couple things. One, Sean, your question, this was driving me nuts. I should have known this. If you can check your claim status, if you go under the weekly, file your weekly claim portal on the iowaworkforcedevelopment.gov site, there's a tab there you can check. Paulette, if you don't mind, check with Mary B to get my email address. Everybody doesn't mind. We will get inundated there. And then if I need to get you another question, I certainly will. Earlier question, but better, Dan. Did you read that one already?
Yeah.
Okay.
Email address, we will, Paulette, we will provide that.
Yeah. Earlier question, but better stated, I hope. We have team members who can't come to work right now because school is closed, but school would be out come June. Will these team members still be eligible for unemployment when school? That's a good question, Dan. Have we crossed the bridge on that yet?
It depends, Dan. What it is right now, it's going to depend on their circumstance. If they have summer care available to them, that might still be available. So what we're doing right now is we're paying out benefits to those who are impacted for the coronavirus period. But certainly if somebody has like a telecommuting offer, or they can work from home or something along those lines, they have to work. So it depends on if the circumstances change from May to June. That's going to make that different, but that's what it depends on. If they're going to have daycare issues, then they can still file for unemployment. But if their kids are in summer care or something like that through the schools, then they're going to have to do that.
If a parent can't work because their daycare is closed for coronavirus, can they claim unemployment? Yep, they can file.
Yeah, the only thing on that is if the employer gives you a telecommuting offer or working from home or something along that, you would have to then take that offer.
Mary's posting on here. You can find the recording of this session at dsmpartnership.com and go ahead and search the employment resources. And thank you for doing that, Mary. The next question is the additional $600 added to benefits of $488 weekly amount. That's correct. So that's what we're determining on how that's issued, but that would be correct. Reeves, that's a good question. So there would be the $600 on top of your weekly benefit amount. That's correct.
Yep, and that weekly is going to be different for everybody. It just depends on the wages in the base period and how many dependents you may have. So, but it looks like that's the intent, is to have the $600 on top of whatever weekly benefit amount you qualify for.
My husband is furloughed and is applying for unemployment. I own my own business and I'm applying as well. He doesn't claim me in this instance, right? We have one child as well. Does one of us just claim her? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that one, it depends on how, he may be able to claim you as well. It depends on your income. So certainly check when he is filing for that if you qualify as a dependent, because you may qualify as a dependent. But he certainly, only one of you will be able to claim the child, so at least make sure that you're both not doing that. But he may be able to claim you as a dependent depending on the circumstances.
Does that look right, the website I got on there? Iowa Workforce Development. I got 2 A's in there?
2 W's.
2 W's. Okay. How's that?
Good.
Okay, I just typed in the website, guys, so you have it. Mary put hers on there. Maybe this is the website you wanted. Sorry. Please share the website. I just got that. The labor site, I think that's on there. So we're at noon. We can certainly go longer. I certainly want to thank Nick for joining me. Having his experience here is always very, very helpful. I really want to thank everybody for allowing us to come on. I want to thank the Des Moines Partnership Group for allowing us to do this. We're going to be able to we're going to put out a lot more information as it comes. Just follow us on social if you're not. Please try to. That way you can get the information, and just really stay glued to iowaworkforcedevelopment.gov. If you're not going on there every day, try to go on there every other day. And thank you, everybody. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, everyone. This is going to be a hard time for a lot of people, and we're here to help as much as we can during this time. And we're here for you guys. So let us know what we can do, and we will do our best to get back as promptly as possible.
See ya.
This is Mike Caldwell from the Greater Des Moines Partners. Thank you, Greater Des Moines Partnership. Thank you all for attending today. And feel free to reach out to the partnership through our website. Thank you all.